First of all, they take you off the court if you're not scoring points. Got to score. So in any business, if your sales are not happening, you're going to have to close the store. So how do you get people in the store, and what products are you selling? The quality. Why sell Naugahyde as real leather? You got to have real goods. And if you know it, just know what you're selling.
Hey, creative. Are you ready to discuss profits, the money, the ways to make it happen? The Profitable Creative Podcast is for you, the creative, how you define it. Videographers, photographers, entrepreneurs, marketing agencies, you get it. CEO of Core Group and author Christian Brim interviews industry experts, creative entrepreneurs, and professionals alike who strive to be creative and make money at the same time. Sound like you? Tune in now. It's time for profit.
Welcome to another episode of The Profitable Creative, the only place on the interwebs where you will learn how to turn your passion into profit. I am your host, Christian Brim. Joining me today, famed musician and music producer Peter Bunetta. Peter, thank you for joining us.
Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you might be.
Yes. So I know there are a lot of interviews of you out there, so people are familiar with you and your story, but is it looking back on when you started this journey, is there something maybe that you would want to highlight in the last 40 years or so?
Oh yeah, there was a pivotal moment when I was like all young musicians who saw Ed Sullivan. I'm 73. I've been at this since I saw the Beatles on Ed Sullivan that fateful night. And I decided I wanted a band as well.
Were you in that audience?
I wasn't in the audience. I was sitting I lived with my grandparents, and we were watching Ed Sullivan, and I had been taking drum lessons, and that's when I decided that, okay, I have to do this with other people, and I want to do that.
Did you make your grandparents crazy? I mean,
Not at all.
With the drum set? No, I mean that.
They were very supportive, and I miss them. I lost them a long time ago when I was 21. But my grandfather was, they were of Italian descent. They were both from Sicily, and they came here. My grandfather was a fruit and vegetable guy and made enough money to buy a few apartments, buildings, and we lived in them. And my grandmother rented apartment to a drum teacher next door, and she took off money from the rent to give me drum lessons.
Nice.
And they set up the drums downstairs next to the furnace where my grandfather made the heat for the buildings.
Yes.
So they loved what I was doing. I would watch, Lawrence Welk with my grandmother and play on the couch with spoons and knives or whatever I could get my hands on that would bang against the corner of the couch. And then they got me a drum set, and then they loved it. No one ever said stop.
Well, if you're like most percussionists I've known through the years, you're always moving. You're always tapping. You're always,
I was, and sometimes I still do it at this point because I still play. And my wife says, stop that. So it never stops. You're right. But at an early age, I wanted to do this, and I became focused on getting work. So I worked all the local communion parties, birthday parties, and two of my friends, one played accordion, and his name was Andre Ferrulo, and the other was a guy named Henry Fergassi, and the three of us played, and then we incorporated Mike Morato, and we were off. Eventually, Andre left. I think he's a doctor now. That's what I heard. I haven't talked to him in a billion years. Henry's no longer with us. Mike is no longer with us. But we had a very successful grammar school band. We were making $5 each, then $10 each, then $15 each. And as we went through high school, we became the band that everybody knew. And I really made a great living, in high school, I was making at least $300 to $400 a week.
That was a lot of money.
That was a lot of money. And so I got the taste of what it was, and I was always out there hustling for work.
So when did you have to start learning the business of music?
When I started to further on down the road, as I wanted to get into the recording end of the business and start becoming a player in the studio and chasing a record deal. You know, the glitter of just getting a deal is all you want. You just want to get a record deal and make an album and go on tour. But after I had 3 albums with a band that I was in called Kraken on Warner Brothers, we did 3 albums. We toured with everyone. It was great. Nothing was happening in terms of, we didn't have hits. And my father, who I didn't have a close relationship with growing up, he had left when I was about a month old. And then I connected with him. But he came to visit, and he's a very smart guy. Great, not great dad, but a really smart guy. Yeah. And he said to me, he felt something because I felt something, like the band, we might have hit a roadblock. We had toured, we had put 3 records out, and nothing. We hadn't increased our finances, personal or collective. And my father said, listen, you don't want to be a 40-year-old drummer or a 40-year-old male model. It's just not a good look. I think you should learn your business. If you're going to be in this, you should learn it. And my brother was also in the business. And my brother was a manager, and he was an agent first. And before that, he was a road manager. And before that, he was a road guy. And he upped his own profile and his knowledge. And so through Al, I started to look at the business differently. And he made me aware of publishing, and he made me aware of deal, what a deal consists of, producer royalties and band royalties and publishing income.
Right.
And so after the band broke up, I decided to move to LA and get into the studio business. And I started playing on different people's records. And I started watching what producers did. And I knew what they did because we had great producers of our band. We had Russ Titleman produce our record, who's one of the great producers of all time. Did Eric Clapton, Stevie Winwood, the list goes on and on. Ricky Lee Jones. He was a Warner Brothers staff producer. And then we had Michael Omartian, who produced our records, who produced Christopher Cross, played on Asia, was the keyboard player of Asia, Steely Dan's records, and many, many more. Produced Donna Summer, worked hard for the money. Brilliant, brilliant musician. And so I watched them and watched everybody, and I figured, you know what? I don't want to be the one waiting for the call. I'd like to be the one making the phone call.
Yeah.
And so my partner in the band, who had moved down from San Francisco, where we had been living for years, we moved to LA and we jumped into the business. And then a friend of ours who I had become very close with, we had become close with, on one of my stops in Woodstock, New York, where I lived for a bunch of years. His name was Robbie Dupree. And we got a little money and we made a demo, 3 songs. And one of those songs was a record called Steal Away, which is still a big record after 45 years. And we jumped in and we became producers. And then we started learning about the budgets, our points, our royalties, publishing, writing songs. And once we learned that, there was no turning back, because you see the importance of quantifying all the work that you put into learning music and how you can really come full circle if you understand the mechanics of the business. And publishing is real lifeblood of the industry.
So let me ask you a question. You're in your 30s at that point?
At that point, I was 19, let's see, that was 1979. So I was 28.
Okay.
And yeah, I mean, it's just turning the corner.
Was that a difficult transition to go from a musician to a producer where you weren't performing?
Not at all, because again, part of all of it is to see how many plates you can keep spinning without going crazy. So I always managed to play live while I was producing. I was also involved in a band called Billy and the Beaters. We had a song called Billy had recorded a song called At This Moment, which became a massive hit. And so I was playing with that band as well as producing during the day and during the week. And on weekends, I could play with Billy and the Beaters. So I always satiated the appetite for live playing, which I think is very important because you can feel audience response.
Did you sleep during this time? Of course, you were.
I got some sleep, but I was hustling, you know. I was nonstop, and because right after Robbie became a hit, we started getting people. The next record we had was Matthew Wilder, "Ain't Nothing Gonna Break My Stride,"
Mm,
and that was huge. And we became aware that we had created a production company,
yes.
which is again the evolution of learning the business. So in the job, we couldn't. There was no one who was going to call us to produce records unless we put points on the board. And we did with Steal Away, but still wasn't established enough in one song, one radio song. By the way, we had two on that record one was called Hot Ride Hearts was the other one.
Okay.
But after that, I had known Matthew Wilder from my days in Boston at college. And when he came out to LA, we signed him to a production deal. And we became co-publishers of everything he wrote as part of the production deal. And that's where the business really started to take shape, where we saw the publishing income from a major, major hit song like Break My Stride, which today, now I've since sold my portion of it after 29 years. But it was a very important element in my business acumen of, okay, now I can see owning a piece of a song, what that can generate, especially if it's a major song like Break My Stride was.
Was there any point during that journey where financially you struggled? Like we're like, I don't know if we're going to make it.
Well, it's funny you say that. Right before Break My Stride,
Yeah.
we had signed a production deal with Elektra Records based on Robbie Dupree, Success at Elektra, the two singles. Because another side of the business that is really important to know in any business, doesn't matter, relationships they're key. How you establish your relationships, the authenticity of the relationship, not just, politicking,
Yeah.
but having authentic, because my mantra from early on was it's not who I know, it's who I avoid that would make me more successful. Because so many people come at you when you do have a hit.
Yes.
That you have to be very careful on not just taking any deal or partnering with people that you really don't vet. You have to vet.
Right.
And the vetting comes with your gut. For me, I make the mistake. Well, it's not a mistake because I've done it my whole life. I sign deals with my heart. If I don't like the person, I can't work with them.
Yeah.
There have been instances throughout my career, but going back to your initial question, we got signed to a production deal. And my wife was pregnant with our first son, Julian, and we had just bought a house.
Okay.
And they dropped us. The regime changed at Elektra between when we got signed. So the new regime just didn't honor the production deal.
Did they just figure you didn't have enough money to sue them, or?
Well, it wasn't even about that. The deal was in play. It wasn't signed yet.
Okay.
So it was in that funny period.
Okay.
We were just out, but the excitement was there because, wow, we've got this deal. And now I'm having a baby and we've got this house. And so, yeah, things didn't feel good. You know, you're going up Everest on rollerblades at that point. You have the wrong shoes on. And so we had this song called Break My Stride, and nobody wanted it. Everybody said it was the worst song, which made things even worse. Clive Davis threw it back at us and said, this is the worst song I've ever heard.
Really?
Every record company, nobody wanted it except one little record company. A dear friend of mine who's no longer with us, named Stuart Love, worked at a little label called, I'm just blank on it, Private Eye.
Okay, yeah.
Ooh, that felt good to get that one out.
Yes.
Private Eye. And with that one little label, we hit a jackpot, and it saved it gave us the next vine to go and hold on to.
Right.
And it was solid. It wasn't greased. You know, it wasn't the slippery slope. And with that record, then another record came. And then we just started getting work. It led to Lauren Wood. We did a song on the Pretty Woman soundtrack. We did two. But Fallen was huge. And then we had the Temptations. We did a movie, and then the Temptations asked us from the movie track to do a whole album. That got us into Motown, where Smokey Robinson heard it, and we did the whole Smokey Robinson record, where Smokey won a Grammy, and it just started rolling from there. Kenny G, Michael Bolton, Soul Provider. It just kept. Then people were calling us by that time.
So is it just the success, or what else do you attribute?
Well, I attribute it back to, first of all, you have to, they take you off the court if you're not scoring points.
Okay.
You gotta score. So in any business, if your sales are not happening, you're going to have to close the store.
Right.
You have to. So how do you get people in the store, and what products are you selling? The quality. Why sell Naugahyde as real leather? You gotta have real goods. And if you know it, just know what you're selling. I knew what we wanted. We wanted great songs. Well, at the time, it's all you did have. You had great singers and great songs. There was no Pro Tools. There was no. It was all analog. It was musicians together. It was very, very formidable. It had a place, and it's been the history until the digital revolution. It was, there was no fixing the vocals with a machine.
Right.
You had to sing.
Right.
So we just tried to find great songs, and we were always working with people who could sing. We had such a wide palette, from Judy Collins. I worked with John Prine. I worked with the great Steve Goodman. The list goes on of great singers and artists, real artists. So once it got rolling, we would just, you had to be smart with, my wife was very smart. My wife, she took care of the finances. I mean, the investing, and she's very property conscious and land.
Yes.
So, we would buy, we moved like 6 times to keep upgrading our position as our children got older. And real estate was really good for us. So I know people that have made a lot more than I have and have nothing to show for it, because remember, along the way, there's a lot of landmines out there. And one of them is, and it doesn't matter what the industry is, but in our industry, you equate it with ours because it's rock and roll, but drugs along the way. I have so many friends that have spent their rewards in places that there were no returns. And so I was pretty lucky that way. I wasn't addicted to anything except making music.
Yeah.
And so, at this age now, I enjoy it. And now my children are in it, and we've built a family business out of it. And I've tried to give them the foundation and understanding, and they've surpassed what I could have ever dreamed of in terms of working with the new technology and the new business.
Today's episode of The Profitable Creative is brought to you by Core Group. Are you tired of doing it all yourself? Do you feel like you have no plan? Let Core Group guide you to build the business of your dreams. Core Group, your go-to accountant for creatives.
Well, let's talk about that for a minute. So, the whole idea of family businesses is kind of antiquated. There's not a lot of businesses that pass on from generation to generation anymore. Did you push your children to be in the business?
Well, it's so funny. Our environment, their environment, our environment was all about music. My wife was like real accommodating when I had so many people. I was all my wired, crazy, harebrained ideas of acts that lived with us. And I would just, chase our dreams together. Like if I had bands from England stay with us, I had rappers, I had reggae bands. So my kids lived in an environment with a lot of, I call it the combination dreamers, riverboat gamblers. I was the riverboat gambler and we were all the dreamers. And so my kids saw this energy. They saw their dad being an 11-year-old, and their wife gave us a lot of room and supported the idea. And the kids would come to the studio with me. They saw great musicians playing. They became musicians and studied music. And I never pushed them into it. It was just what they grew up in, and
Right.
They loved it. They were drawn to it. But I think they saw the reality of it in a lot of ways, because there were instances where they saw me getting fired from a production,
right,
for reasons that I thought were politically wrong, or where it was just, I never played the full game of the music business. I never worked for a record company. I was always independent.
Right.
I was asked, but I thought independence suited my personality better. And, there was disappointment. And they saw me go through the ups and downs. They saw me not get out of bed for 3 weeks because, the world had collapsed. My world collapsed. But, it's just part of the landscape that we lived on. It was, we didn't have real 9 to 5 jobs in our house.
So they went in with their eyes wide open. They knew.
Wide open. And their uncle was a manager and a very successful business guy in the music business. And they saw a joy. It was like we were in the joy business. We weren't in a bad business.
Yeah.
We had fun. They lived in a great neighborhood. I didn't miss much. I was at every little league game, basketball game, school functions. I participated. I never chose to die on the music business hill.
You were an excellent father.
I tried to be. I tried to do what I felt was necessary for my own sanity while I was chasing a business that was a slippery slope, climbing the slippery slope. And you really have to know, you got to have the footwear, you got to have the Gulliver to take rejection, to believe what you have is really worth chasing. And you also have to know when to let it go and realize, okay, there's so many people on the team to make a hit record that someone else can fumble at the 10 in the red zone. You're in the red zone. It's right there. The record's signed. We got the deal. It's at radio, and it dies at number 50.
Yeah.
That's not my fault. Some of it, I mean, you can't pinpoint what went wrong. But if it got to 50, why couldn't it get to 20?
So we were talking before we came on about balancing the creative passion and the money aspect. And you said that you had decided to remain independent. I assume that had to do with your creative independence.
No question. No question. I mean, I've seen too many people die on the vine when they took a job with a check every Friday.
So talk about that personally, like balancing your passion with the profits or the money. How do you go through that process of deciding what to work on, what not to work on?
Well, it's just again, it's like playing blackjack or playing poker. Okay, I'm going to hold these and I'm going to throw these down and hope to get better cards.
Right.
It's a gamble. You don't play poker as a team. It's individual.
Right.
And it's your gut and it's luck. And when it's a subjective product, all those things are in the equation.
Yes.
It's just your gut and how much do you want to put your head in the guillotine and hope that the lever stays and it doesn't come down and chop your head off that week or that day or that month. And it's instincts. And I've chosen, or I've tried to tell acts that I've worked with. I won't name thing, but I had an amazing deal. I made an amazing record on my own with this country group, and I went to shop it in Nashville.
Right.
Everybody loved it. Two people that I respect very much loved it, and other labels did. The group I wanted to go with someone else because I knew we'd be better off there.
Right.
They went with the other company for $40,000 more than my people were offering.
Yeah.
And bad choice. Because in the end, I got fired. They brought in someone else, and then they removed someone from the group, and the group never was heard of again.
Yeah.
I'm feeling in my gut, I know we could have gone with my guys and gotten much more distance on that tank of the gas that was involved with the other label. I couldn't do anything because I didn't have that power. It wasn't a production deal. It was just me signing a personal thing with the group. And they had the last day. They were also underage, so parents had the say. And that's something that in any industry you have to really acquiesce when someone's not of the age to sign a contract. Their parents, and you know what? They don't know the business.
What do they call those parent momagers?
Yeah. Oh, well, this was a dadager. But ultimately, you have to quickly, just like in a game, you have to quickly, that defeat is gone. Let's go to the next one. And I'm not going to, it hurt because I put a lot of work into it, but it prepares you for what the next event is because this is what you've chosen. There was no way I was going to get what kind of job was I looking for? I wasn't looking for any other job. I just knew that this is who I am. And I think that's the real thing in any business. You got to really have those conversations. The hardest conversation you'll ever have is with yourself. And you have to know that this is where I want to be, and I will outwork myself to make sure I get the best shot at this opportunity. And they don't teach that at Harvard. I don't know where they teach that. That's a personal.
The street,
exactly. The hustle, the understanding of when rent is due when food, you open the refrigerator and there's something to eat. And also, you're either going to take mass transit or you're going to have your own car. And to me, that was never I wasn't about, I was never about, I didn't really care about the car model. It was more from the internal versus the external. And I
Yes.
would recommend anyone to really do the work from the inside out, not the outside in. Doesn't matter. Nowadays, the playing field is good. You don't need a big office anymore. You don't need
True.
like lavish receptionists and all. Those days are over because you can do it from home quickly. People are making records. We have studios. We have all our studios on our properties, and we don't have elaborate offices. People sit with laptops across from each other. They congregate, they talk, and there's no separation with, little walls. So it's a different world now. It's a completely different world. And all I can say is product is your destination. What is it that you're trying to make? We try to make great music and deliver it with artists that are just, the best, because it's crowded now. I mean, there's 60,000 records a week being released.
Yeah.
I mean, some of
Yeah.
them, I can't even keep track, but I don't look at those things. We don't look at those numbers. They don't mean anything to us. We just know what we have to do. And that's all we have control of. And I think,
So
yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, like anything, if you're in a race, the minute you look to the side, you're going to lose that tenth of a second. As the great Seinfeld episode, not episode, but it was the Olympics, the difference between gold and silver. It's like here,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm always amazed when I go to these, these farmers markets. Everybody's selling the same thing next to each other. Why do I buy oranges from that guy and not that guy? They're right next
Yes.
door to each other. There's something has to happen. The way they have the signs, the way the bags are, the way one uses Venmo, the other just takes cash. It's just so many variables of everybody does it differently. So I just have to look at the way we do it and hope that people feel it and hear it, because those combinations are deadly, in our industry.
Hey, listeners, are you ready to turn your passion into profit? Then grab a copy of Profit First for Creatives. Click the link in the show notes to purchase a copy. And if you're not ready to make that full commitment, you can download a free copy of the first chapter. Check it out right now. So I'm going to ask you a question you probably don't want to answer.
Go ahead.
Bands that you have not played for or had anything to do with the production, what are some of your favorites?
Bands that I haven't played with or had nothing to do with
Yes.
the production? Oh, the greatest. Well, I'm friends with, I'm very close friends with guys in Elton John's band, Davy Johnstone, who's one of the great guitar players of many generations, who's been with Elton for 50 years. I would have loved to play with Elton John or been a part of those records. Those are just classics. There's so many.
That's why I didn't ask you to name one. So
yeah, there's
top of your
the
head.
classic. There's great music. I've drawn from so much of it, and I can only say that that I'm a product of listening. I listen to everything, and even today, my children, my boys are, we're involved with so many great records. My son Julian has written and produced. Right now, out there is Teddy Swims, Sabrina Carpenter, Thomas Rhett. He developed and he wrote, and our writers too. We have a team of 15 writer producers in the publishing company. and they have been responsible for One Direction, 44 of their songs, some of the best songs. Niall's records, solo records, Harry's first solo record, Little Big Town. There's so much music, and I stand by all their music because I can listen.
What do you gravitate to as a genre?
I'm all over the place. I love great songwriters like John Prine, and I listen to the people I've just mentioned. I love great pop music. I love Bruno Mars. I think he's amazing. I love Lady Gaga stuff. I love Adele stuff. We've got some great young talent that's coming out next year. There's a young kid named Obed Padilla. He's Mexican American. He's amazing. I'm so excited about that. I'm very contemporary. And plus, I listen to all the classics, whether it's Miles Davis, if it's the Stones, if it's the Beatles, if it's again Elton, if it's Cat Stevens, if it's doo-wop. I love music. I love the narrative, the lyric, and I love great melody. So I listen to all the Motown records that I never get tired of great music. I just co-produced a young writer we have named Mags Duval, and hopefully that'll come out next year. I'm involved in a musical. We'll go do a producer's workshop in November in New York. It's based on music like from the 80s. And basically we wrote it in the 80s. We wrote it in 1985, 86, 87. I can't remember the year. But it's still drawing attention and energy. So I just lived it. I've been privileged to live this life of songs. Robbie Dupree still makes, we made a few records up until a few years ago that people can find. I still play with Robbie when he wanted to play music. I have a group called Playing for Change.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you about. I didn't want to miss that plug. So tell us about that.
Playing for Change was started 22 years ago by a guy who was an engineer of mine. And we met on a project, and he had played me the stuff he was working on. He would go film street musicians in New York and in LA. And anyway, it turned into becoming, we've built 22 schools around the world for music and art. I traveled for 10 years around the world, put a band together. There's videos all over the internet, Playing for Change. We take great songs. Playing for Change does not waste a great song. First one we did was Stand By Me, and it went viral, and it became a massive viral hit. And we had a documentary about Playing for Change that was well received at the Tribeca Film Festival and others. And I just got back this year I did Byron Bay in Australia, the festival there, and Tokyo. I've been around the world many times with the band, and it's something like, you said, do you still play? Yeah, I love playing, and I get to see music from everywhere. And it's pretty powerful ingredient when you see people from different countries singing Hotel California, and they lived in a village somewhere in Congo.
Right.
The power of it, and that fuels me. I'm making a Congolese record as we speak. I'm trying to do a little EP of some of that music. But, our family business, the boys, Damon, my son Damon, is, I think, a brilliant business mind, and he's a musician as well. His vision of what the future has become in music, he's right on the pulse of it. They make adjustments for all the delivery of how it's, sold, and it still comes down to artist and song. So I feel that the guys have now fortified themselves with all the foundational tools that might increase your chances of success. So we have a great staff. Everybody's really smart, young people. They love music. They've got character. They've got integrity. They're kind. They're smart, and they understand the importance of knowing what you're selling. And so I've learned a lot from these young guys and girls. And I'm sure I will continue to. And hopefully they learn something from me because they keep me around.
Well, all they have to do is listen, because you have plenty of wisdom.
They give me love every day, and I know when to stay away and let them run the ball. Just keep running the ball. And, we don't turn it over much. We might not have success with everything we put out, but we do know how to score. And that's important, because if you've never scored, frustration sets in. And people that start a business and can't get it off the ground after a while, there's time constraints. I mean, you only got so much money to fuel a business until you got to make some money before it can.
Yeah.
You got to, you get your loan, you borrow it from people, however you do it. I told my sons when we started, let's keep $20,000 in the bank account all the time. Let's just never get below that. So we could take people out for breakfast, lunch, or dinner. We can buy some upgrades of equipment, and we'll just keep hustling. And that's what we did. In the early days, my son, we got him a publishing deal at Warner's, so that gave him income. That was active income.
Right.
And that's really important, because that set his sights and gave him an understanding of what it feels like to be paid for music. And from there, he ran it, man. There was no one that would ever. I always say this to people when they ask about, what's your company? What's it? And I say, there's a bunch of talented kids. No one will outwork them. They might work as hard, but no one is going to outwork our team. They really go do the job. They go network. They go understand the importance of taking someone out for a dinner and just the social aspect of networking. Right. And again, not to politicize it, but to start relationships that really are important, whether it's with the major labels or now in the digital world, the people that run the Apple playlists and the Spotifys and the Amazons and all the different portals that sell music. And just knowing the promoters of festivals, managers of artists, what my dad said to me way, way back, know your business. And the music business is growing and growing and growing, because a young kid sits in his bedroom and then puts it out there. And before you know it, a record company sees that like 50 million kids are streaming that song, and then they sign. That's the new business. It's just the way it's turned out. I have learned about it. I don't have to actively do it, because all the company does that. The guys do that. My sons know how to direct and empower everybody to grow and to, go do it. We can't hold your hand. I didn't hold my kids' hands along the way. They had to go out and feel it for themselves, and they did. And like I had to, like we all have to. But I think failure, it's a piece of this recipe for success. If you don't fail, if you never get knocked out in the ring or get punched in the face, you don't know what it feels like. And you got to be able to take that and come back and throw as well. And I think, the rejection, maybe call it not failure, but rejection is a better word. If you don't have the thick skin when people tell you no over and over again, and your gut's telling you, wait a minute, I know this is good, you're not going to survive it. And that goes for anything. That's any business. I mean, obviously, if you open up a restaurant, like no one gets food poisoning in the music. You get ear poisoned by bad music.
Right.
But, in other businesses, there's some serious guidelines. In our business, we're just making it up. We're just making it up, really. And I tell everybody that in the company. Don't take yourself that seriously. Take your work seriously. And in that, you'll find the craft. It'll appear to you what the craft is, and then you just have to really get better at the craft. Like a carpenter or a metal worker or a mechanic, just get better at the craft. And you'll have repeat business. Without that, there is no business. There is no business.
I love that. And Peter, I thank you so much for your time and your wisdom for sharing that.
You're welcome. Great.
Listeners, if you like what you heard, please rate the podcast, share the podcast. If you don't like Peter, then I'm really sorry.
I'll go see my therapist.
Right. Until later, ta-ta for now.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of The Profitable Creative. Until next time, you money lovers. And don't forget, Profit First for Creatives is live via Amazon. Link below.